Call to order the meeting of the State Board of Higher Education this Wednesday, June 29th at 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time. This is a special meeting of the State Board of Higher Education. With this, I will point out that we're following the agenda very closely. It's a special meeting. We will stay, you see the tasks before us. We are working together. This agenda before us is to work as a unified system, and all of the campuses, all the universities and colleges are equally important as we discuss these contracts and the items on the agenda. With that, Christy, would you call roll?
Board Chair Nesset.
Here.
Mr. Morton.
Here.
Dr. Melliker.
Here.
Mr. Steeman.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Reichert. Here. Mr. Ness.
Here.
Mr. Hacker.
Here.
Ms. Tufte. Dr. Murphy.
I'm here.
BSC. DSU. Lake
DSU
Region.
is here.
I'm sorry. Who was that?
DSU, Tom Mitchell's here. I do have a meeting in an hour, though. I apologize.
Thank you. Lake Region.
Doug Garland for Lake Region State College.
Mayville.
Steve Benson for Gary Hagan.
Minot.
Hi, this is Steve Shirley.
DCB. NDSCS.
This is John Richmond. Thank you.
NDSU.
Steve Bershine here.
UND. Valley City. Willis.
This is Lori Betty, University of North Dakota, sitting in for the president.
Thank you. Williston.
John Miller here.
Okay, thank you very much. On to our agenda. The first item number 1, is to approve the agenda as presented. I'm going to ask, we are not allowed to make any changes to it, Mary Kay?
No, it's a special meeting.
Okay, special meeting, we need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to approve is sent out. Second.
Christy?
Dr. Melliker.
Yes.
Mr. Hacker. Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Hacker votes yes.
Mr. Steeman.
Yes.
Ms. Reichert.
Yes.
Mr. Ness.
Yes.
Board Chair Nesset.
Yes. I will point out that we are not live streaming this meeting. We are recording it, though, just so the board knows. Okay. Item number 2, discuss the evaluation process by tiers. I will defer to our Chancellor, Dr. Hagerott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, for those who weren't at the board meeting a couple weeks ago, this was a discussion item at some length, got some great feedback. And the objective of that is to meet the HLC requirements to better integrate board members into the presidential evaluation system. This has been a topic for the governance committee or governance study group with Mike Ness, Larry Scogan, Tisa Mason, and myself. And so based on feedback I got, some good feedback, in particular that in a legislative year, it could be hard to do spring evaluations, that we might want to actually go to a two-period system, fall, for example, the 2-year schools, like 1 December perhaps, and then that takes care of 5 schools, and then the other regional and research universities are done in May and June, which would keep us outside the legislative cycle. But if you remember the lead up that required, there's a lot of work that leads up, so so there'll be things to do. So at this point, we'll continue to study that and work in it with the governance committee, but lots of good feedback and generally the idea of having more involvement. And there are some members who prefer not to have more involvement. That's fine, but generally the idea of level loading this and finding improvements to our evaluation system. So that's all I have at this point. Look forward to continuing the discussion.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Ms. Reichert?
So, just so I'm clear, we're not implementing anything. Okay. Because as I read the statute, I think this puts us in a tough spot, to have an annual, if we're going to have goal planning and reporting on goals at different times of the year, I think because the statute requires us to have an annual strategic plan and report annually to the legislature. And so if we have kind of goals that are halfway done, or we don't really know where we're at with these yet because we haven't had our evaluation. I think it kind of throws us off a little bit, and so I have that concern, as well as throwing us off from the fiscal cycle for budgeting purposes, because I assume this you would make salary adjustments at that same time.
And that's why we're going to keep studying it. Maybe it's something where we have the meetings and the board involvement, and the actual final document is done in cycle. Like we have a 95% evaluation on most of the stuff, and the stuff that changes in the next few months then are added in. So we'll look forward to work with you on those things. Glad you had the input.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I have
Dr.
a
Milliken?
question about my understanding of the current contracts for presidents is rolling 2 years, or what is the current contract?
The current system is when someone is hired, typically they're given a multi-year contract.
Okay.
And this happens out of cycle. That's why I don't know if there's really a statute problem with having contracts out of cycle, because Dr. Mason was hired in October, and Dr. Mitchell was hired in December, and so we do this already, So the current practice is you're given a multi-year contract, and then as the time ticks down where you have the 1 year remaining on the contract, or some fraction of that, perhaps 18 months like in TC Mason, you reset that with adding an additional year. So that you have a 2-year rolling contract, and then it decrements down to 1 year out, and then that's when you have the discussion of whether you add an additional year or not. That's been the current practice.
So that is a current practice?
The current practice, but there was a time in the recent past where, there was variations of that, so.
So the only change, from what I can understand from the system, is that the months of the year would be spread out more to give you more time to do the appropriate evaluation.
To spread the work out, and then back to Member Reichert's question, one of the innovations that Dr. Mason has looked into is you have a really in-depth campus review every 3 to 5 years, because let's face it, some presidents can't really be held accountable turning something around in 1 year.
Sure.
There's just no way. And then you put pressure on people to overemphasize metrics that really aren't that valid. So that gets some of that longer view.
And I understand the contracts would be staggered a little bit just because of the staggering of the months, but that's the only change. Is that correct?
And again, it's all tentative. We'll work with you all on that, where you want to proceed. And I had some feedback from one board member said he liked the tier system because right now you have a risk factor of everybody's contract falling.
Right.
On 1 July. What if there's some crisis in the creditworthiness all of a sudden? People are like, whoa, hold it, I'm not sure I'm going to be on the job market. You have everybody potentially be able to go on the job market. I highly doubt that would ever happen in our state, but it's happening in Illinois right now. The presidents are on the job market all over because of their fiscal system.
And I like the plan because it does allow us to have more time for evaluations. I also enjoy Carrie's comment as well, because it is important with the budget cycles and with the governor giving appropriate raises at certain times of the budget cycles that we some way, somehow or another can tailor that similar to this. But I do like the plan of giving you more time to do them. I think it makes sense.
Mr. Ness?
Just to follow up on that, that is a practice. It's not in policy or by law in any means. It's just a practice that has been followed in the past, correct? The rolling 2-year contract.
That is my understanding. We could bring the lawyers in and double check there's not something, in a statute somewhere buried, but that's been the interpretation so far.
Just sorry to interrupt, but we do have a policy on that says the initial term is 3 years, and then it's 1 to 3 renewals, 1 to 3 year renewals from.
But as far as when the month happens, I'm just saying, when the evaluation would happen. What I understand is you must have every year an evaluation. Contract dates can vary. And so back 2 weeks ago, the point was we could have another evaluation within the cycle, so we always comply with the requirement of an annual evaluation. We actually go 6 months, give another evaluation, and then reset that. But there's been a lot of good comments, and then some, like I said, there's one member who says, I really don't think a state board member should be in the room when I do evaluations, and so that's something, to work out still.
Yeah, just a comment, if I don't mind. Just we just have gone through a pretty robust strategic planning process, and as I understand all strategic planning processes, it starts with your direction, your strategy body, like a board, and then from there you build goals out based on what the strategy is. And I don't know if there's any way to decouple goal planning so that the goals continue to, our system is developing goals as a system, and they trickle down to the campuses, and we're all in alignment. Is there any way to decouple that process from evaluations? That would be the, I guess, I don't want those things to become, I think we lose sight of some of the continuity of our planning process if we start to.
Yeah, I've been in obviously pretty complex organizations, and quite frankly, the eval systems are tiered and staggered because of the load of a fiscal cycle. We never had all the evals coming due on the fiscal year, and the goal planning and the strategy was for the institution, meaning a person could change out, someone could have a heart attack, and the institution keeps moving forward. So I'm very comfortable with finding ways to do that, but I look forward to talking more with you.
Yes, Ms. Tufte?
As you move forward with this process, I think one thing to keep in mind is that the Budget Finance Committee does review the salary recommendations as a general rule of thumb following legislative practice. And I don't know if that works well to take it apart so far off cycle. I'm not saying that there aren't ways that this could work, but I think it's just one more piece of the puzzle that has to be looked at.
No, that's a great point, and that came up from another board member. And the planning factor there would be, we would tell the universities plan for President X. There'll be a president there, and so it might come out in the wash. You always plan for someone at that level from a budgetary standpoint. I can't anticipate areas where we will have a huge divergence from the existing patterns of 2-year, 4-year, and research salaries. That'd be my guess. But look forward to well, I guess you'll be not with us, your successor's input on exactly those questions. And that's why, again, taking your feedback in, I'm willing to slow down on the process, but I am mindful the HLC said, how are you going to get them more involved? And we can still pile it all in May and June. I'm just telling you, having just gone through that, it would be a lot of traveling and logistically a little more difficult if we still do it that way. But
Madam Chair, would this
Dr.
then
Melvin?
come through us as a policy change?
it'll come through the governance committee that's working on policies for you, so
Okay.
it may well be that.
And so there would be a first reading and a second reading, similar to the rest of the policies,
Yeah,
correct?
if it's
Okay.
a policy, if it's just a practice or procedure, and other things could get rolled into that. Bigger questions about governance, about presidential contracts. And that's what this is for: continuous improvement, how to make this better, more adaptive. Because in some ways we've inherited a system which may not have had a lot of analysis done in it. Maybe just it kind of happened, and we're now trying to make it work. So could there be a better way to make it work? That's what the whole point of the committee is.
Any further questions? Thank you. Chancellor?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the one comment I'd like to make is we have discussed at the Council of College Faculty level with regards to introducing a component of faculty and or staff input via some kind of survey mechanism into the evaluation process. Is that something the governance subcommittee has examined?
Chancellor, if you'd like to address that.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy, Madam Chair. These are all possibilities. I'm just mindful of how much can happen all at once. That we are trying to make improvements as we go along, and there's also been a request for us to look at 360 reviews, which could fall under that. So those are all great inputs that could be added to the list of how to improve our governance and evaluation process. So I'll make a note of it on my list.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on the agenda to item number 3. Item number 3 would be a motion is needed to move into executive session. And in order to do this, the person making the motion would need to read the entire paragraph, number 3, including the paragraph on legal authority. So do we have a motion?
I would move that we enter into executive session to consider the reappointment of and any new contract terms for presidents at the following institutions: Bismarck State College, Lake Region State College, Mayville State University, Minot State University, North Dakota State School of Science, North Dakota State University, and Valley City State University. And number 2, limit the executive session to voting members, non-voting advisors, chancellor, chancellor senior staff, and board council. The legal authority for closing this portion of the meeting is North Dakota Century Code, Section 15-10-17-1A.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Christie?
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Ms. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Board Chair Nesset?
Yes. At this point, the board will move to conference room downstairs on the third floor. All right, at this point, we'll come back into session, and I'd ask for a motion to reconvene the business open portion of the meeting.
So moved.
Second? Second. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. And opposed? All right.
Do we have to take roll?
Yes, we should take roll. Christie, if you take roll.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Morton? Yes. Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker? Yes. Mr. Hacker? Ms. Reichert?
Here?
Mr. Johnson?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Hacker? Board Chair Nesset?
Yes, here.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm
We're-
here.
Who is that?
Mr. Murphy, Dr. Murphy.
Dr. Murphy?
Yes.
But that was still part.
Pardon me? Okay. Did we get Mr. Hacker? Is he on the phone? Doesn't appear so. Okay, at this point, we're back into the open session of the meeting, having just exited our executive session. I'll remind board members that this is still such very, very important information and things we're discussing. If we could keep our cell phones silenced, for this portion of the meeting, I think it really takes our full attention. And I think collectively, we can say that this board is a very professional, thoughtful, deliberate board, and I really appreciate the conversation, both from the board members present and the board members on the telephone who joined us via conference call. I think this was a very professional board, and I'm very, very pleased and proud to be part of it. With that, we are back into session to take action regarding the reappointment of and any new contract terms for presidents at the following institutions. And with that, I would like to open it up to the board as we begin and discuss the contract. And if we would like to begin with the two-year colleges and universities, the two-year colleges.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we move to extend those contracts by 12 months to President Larry Scogan at Bismarck State College, President Doug Darling at Lake Region State College, and John Richmond at North Dakota State College of Science.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on these? This is a motion for a 12-month extension to the existing contracts.
Question, Madam Chair. Will we deal with salaries altogether at the end, or are we going to do that now?
And just to be clear, this takes the contract till 2018, June 30, 2018.
Thank you. And then the question was on the salaries. My understanding is that that's item number 5, and we will do.
When we get to that item, okay.
We'll do that separately, and that would be the salary ranges and salary increases for presidents and vice chancellors. So we'll do that in item number 5. Are there any other comments or discussion on the 2-year, the motion on the floor to extend these contracts by 12 months? Hearing, we have a motion. I will say that I think that these 3 individuals, Dr. Scogan, Dr. Darling, and Dr. Richmond, are all superb. I just commend them for their work. And with that, if we could have a roll call vote.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Ms. Reichert? Yes. Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Board Chair Nesset?
Yes. Okay, thank you. At this point, I'd like to go forward and begin the discussion on the contract renewals for the four-year colleges. This would be for Mayville State, Minot State University, and Valley City State University.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we move to extend the contracts of our three regional presidents that are impacted by 12 months, 1 year, meaning the contract is good till June 30th of 2018. And that would be President Gary Hagan at Mayville, President Tisa Mason at Valley City, and President Steve Shirley at Minot State.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on these, on this motion? Once again, I would like to commend these three individuals. I think they do a very good job. They're very strong leaders, and I think as a board, we commend them. With that, if we can have a roll call, Christy?
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Ms. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Board Chair Nesset?
Yes. We'll now move on to the research universities, and this will encompass NDSU, as the UND contract is already determined by the hiring of Honorable Mark Kennedy. So at this point, do we have discussion or a motion for NDSU contract?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to table a discussion of the contract extension for Dean Brashani, President of the North Dakota State University, until the State Board of Higher Education meeting in November. At that time, the board will review progress on goals of communication, teamwork, collaboration, IT consolidation, and research. The board designates the Chancellor to work with the President of NDSU to determine these goals.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there discussion on this?
Madam Chair, just on a note of discussion, I do appreciate the wonderful things going on at NDSU, serve the students and advance their education, and I do appreciate the hard work that happens there.
Thank you, Mr. Hacker. Any other further discussion? I will echo that same sentiment. I think the work is good. I think there's also work to be done to address the issues that were brought up in the motion, and I think this is a good way forward.
I would agree with Nick.
Yeah, I would echo that. And just say that I think there's some really, really good things happening at NDSU, and I think that, you know, the evaluation recognizes a lot of those, and certainly we've all heard recently from folks who would support that. And I think one of the challenges we have as a board is making sure that, you know, by policy and by really our responsibility as trustees, we have a slightly different perspective that relates to the entire system, and making sure that we're supporting the entire system as well as our individual institutions. And so I think there are wonderful things happening at NDSU, and I want to thank those who have reached out to remind us of that.
Thank you. Well said. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, Christy?
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
No.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Ms. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Board Chair Nesset?
Yes. Thank you. And I will follow up the discussion on all of this. I think the point was just made that this is once again centered on student success, and to do that, we must have, the board is centered on a unified system, and that is truly, you know, our two goals: student success and a unified system. higher education. Item number 5, this is our discussion, fiscal year 17, salary ranges and salary increases for presidents and vice chancellors. At this, I think I will ask the Chancellor to guide us through this.
Yes, these are high-performing executives running complex organizations, learning machines, research machines, taking care of our young people. As we've all heard in the discussions, they are the foundation of diversifying our economy. And quite frankly, I would love to give pay raises, but we are facing perhaps the tightest fiscal conditions in decades in this state. We've had one allotment. We now may have a special session of the legislature, possibly. I was just down in the budget section. We're very, very tight numbers. And we've got 90% guidance for the next budget cycle coming up. So based on, quite frankly, leadership of several presidents, we had a discussion in the cabinet, several presidents took the lead without any prompting from me to have solidarity with the employees, some of which really are struggling. And so as a system-wide response, we then had the presidents come on board in almost every case. And so my recommendation is the pay stays as is. And that's just a reality of not performance, but just the reality of a solidarity in the system statewide in extraordinary conditions where both our governor and lieutenant governor also are not paid pay raises.
Mr. Steeman?
I want to commend our presidents. And there was talked about these are very difficult budgetary times. I don't know that this hasn't been their most difficult and good job along the way. And I also will credit, based on your comments, that obviously a majority of the presidents have taken this approach. And personally, I think it's symbolic, but it's not unnoticed. And but I do want to reiterate that it's in difficult times when good leaders excel. And I want to credit our presidents and same thing, Chancellor. I know it's a same situation for you, so just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I would agree with those comments. We're not going to balance the budget because we don't give them the increases, but it is symbolic that they are saying we will take a 0% for this year. And when many of them have said that, I think we need to follow up on all of them having a 0% increase in freeze salaries for this year, and I appreciate them very much. We have excellent presidents, so this is not a slap at them in any means, but I do appreciate what they do.
Thank you. Further discussion? These are difficult times. These are tough times. This is tightening. This mirrors the public sector. I will tell you that in the public world, salaries are being held or are decreasing. So this certainly is taking ownership by the university system as a whole to address this issue. At this point, your discussion includes the...
Okay, let's move on to the Vice Chancellor.
Yeah, let's move on to Vice Chancellors. I'll let you guide that as well.
Also, I am not taking a pay raise, and I thank you for the acknowledgement, Member Steeman, but my staff is doing extraordinary work. For example, Lisa Feldner is now my chief of staff. We've removed that acting, and she's doing really 3 jobs. And we are facing, if you add everything together, 18%, you could argue, cut across my office, and people are doubling up and just doing extraordinary work. And so that's why you see that we do have pay raises. You can read this, but we do stay below, actually, the governor's guidance at 2.9%. We have an urgent need to hire some more people, but we don't have the resources for that. So the most I can do is symbolic, which is a few $1,000s for Vice Chancellor here and there, but that's why you do see pay raises there. Much like the presidents are all encouraged to reward where they can, their provosts and vice presidents that I've asked also for your support of them in this difficult time.
Thank you.
Madam
Discussion.
Chair,
Go ahead.
I just, we do have a very thin staff, and they are doing a lot of work, so I fully concur with our Chancellor.
Ms. Tufte?
I would agree with that. I think one of the things that these two recommendations, and I'm not opposed to either of them, and I fully support the motions. I think that as the board looks at the administrative cost study, the idea of markets and what our benchmarks are as a board for markets can play into salary conversations across the institutions, because we're kind of all over the board here. And that might be a piece to look at with that administrative cost study and creating some streamlining of that.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Dr. Feldner on that. Could you comment on that for us? Because unless I'm misunderstanding you, I thought markets were included in this evaluation, or excuse me, in this proposal.
I think our benchmarks and our standards of where we'd like people to be at vary across the system, and that the board hasn't looked at that issue as what is an ideal framework for minimums and the maximum end of it.
Dr. Feldner, could you expound on that?
Chair, members of the board. I think that Ms. Tufte is right in the sense of the whole system. So there was each campus, because we don't have a system-wide framework for these Coupa framework, as actually Dr. Melliker mentioned earlier. It would be nice to be able to standardize it across the system for the campuses. Not just for this particular piece, but for everyone. And so I think that that could be something coming out of administrative costs. As you saw the presentation 2 weeks ago, there's various bands and people. I think we need to study it and look at guidance for campuses on how people belong, which people belong in what bands, which job descriptions are in those bands and so on. And that will help us pick a market, a uniform market to compare against. So that doesn't relate to this. This was the market that was used for the system office over the years, and I think there are several compared against other institutions and systems. I believe Tammy would know more on this one, but.
Okay, thank you. And further, Greg or Mr. Steeman?
No questions of Lisa, but I also want to commend our university system staff. And I do think they do a very good job, and I know they're doing a ton of jobs. It's also an opportunity for the board moving down the road to, when we look at where we want to implement certain projects, or whether it's streamlining things, to truly utilize an 11 institution system and the expertise that lies at those 11 different locations, and truly utilize what's out there. So I just wanted to echo that, but also at the same time commend the performance of the staff.
Yes, you may.
Thank you again, Member Steeman. That's exactly what we've had to do, and the campuses have been remarkable, because they could have played, hard to get type of thing. Hey, you do the research, but we have 6 Chancellor studies, remarkable work, which will lead to policy recommendations by you all. The Nexus North Dakota, the technology initiative, and that's what we've had to do. We've had to rely on the extended brain trust of all these faculty, staff, professors, and of course our new strategy, the Envision 2030, will have a huge role of each campus experts, and that's exactly how we do it. We don't think we can ever substitute for all of their expertise, but we have to work very closely collaborating. But thank you.
Any additional comments or discussion?
I would just have one comment, and
Yep.
and that is, I'm okay with this. I understand everyone's taking on additional responsibilities, but and I know benchmarking is only benchmarking. Probably know that as well as anybody, but I am concerned with a couple of these in terms of market median are really pretty low, and so maybe in the future we can. I know you kind of have a limited set of dollars to work with, but push some of those where you've got some 61%, 59% of median. Because at that point, if these numbers are even close, I think we're at risk in that area. So.
I
Thank
think, excuse me, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I think that's true throughout the system. I really struggled with this for a while because I really felt that the presidents deserved a raise as well. And I've had it explained to me that they opted not to do that. But I really think that that they are a very important part. They're actually our frontline people. And our system people, who are also wonderful, are the ones that are supporting us and supporting them as well. So I struggled with this, but I guess I'm coming around to understand it a little bit better right now. But I feel that when the opportunity comes up, and we'll have to find out what the next legislature brings. If it brings no raises for people, that's what we have to live with. But if it does bring an opportunity, I think the first opportunity that we need to look at is our presidents, because as Lisa or Emma brought up, we are, I think Carrie brought it up, we are quite behind on the median in the compensation that we're paying some of those, and we just got to keep up with that to get the type of candidates and get the type of people that we want to work here.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve salary ranges and salary increases for presidents and vice chancellors?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Christie?
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Ness?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Steeman?
Yes.
Ms. Reichert?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Dr. Melliker?
Yes.
Board Chair Nesset?
Yes. Okay, thank you. We're on to item number 6, discuss the Chancellor's performance evaluation. I would like to bring the board up to date with where we are with the Chancellor's evaluation. I'll begin by Board Policy 604.2 states, the performance of the Chancellor shall be reviewed annually by the board in a meeting with the Chancellor at a time designated by the board president. We are in this process. At this point, there is not a contract extension for the Chancellor, so we do not have to meet a deadline, although I see our evaluation being done in the next probably 15 days, to be quite honest with you. So to bring you current board members as to where the evaluation is, Chancellor Haggerat's submitted his goals last fall, which we approved in December. This month, Dr. Haggerat sent a self-evaluation related to those goals to me, and we have reviewed those, or I have reviewed them. Based on that self-evaluation and input, I'm writing a draft review that I will be sharing with the board. My plan at this point is I will accept input from board members. I will defer once again to legal. As an individual, may I gather input from the board?
What do you like here?
Do
you mean you want them to fill out a questionnaire or send you something, or
just an informal? At this point, I'd like some input from board members on Chancellor evaluation.
right now?
Not now.
Oh.
No.
Okay, I'm
Not
sorry.
right now.
No, you can, as long as you're not exchanging the information that you're receiving from each of them.
Right.
Then you're fine. You just can't tell the others what has been shared with you.
Just gathering it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That will be our process. Once finalized, my thought is that we would send it out to the board and place it in the Chancellor's record. That goes into the permanent record. I am open to ideas. If you have, I would like to have input from this board on this process. I do think this is an important step of our, well-being and board responsibilities. if anyone has any comments, I welcome them. If not, I will look for, perhaps comments from calls or emails just as input in the next 2 weeks on the Chancellor's evaluation topics. Okay? Well, thank you.
On behalf of the board, thank you, Kathy, for taking on that.
You're very welcome. Assessment of the meeting and potential future agenda items. Once again, I'm going to go out and I'm going to say that I think in the discussion of these contracts and the negotiations that we have, the board has come to realize that our current one of our current policies dealing with, and please stop me if I can't discuss this, but I would like to say that the terms of presidential contracts, we came to a consensus on the board that we would like to further the discussion on the terms of president contracts, and that is worthy of a policy review on the board level. So that I would ask as a agenda item for a very near future, future board meeting.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Oh, I could just say that we have a governance committee set up that's looking, and it's a natural fit with Member Ness, Tisa Mason, Larry Scogan, and I to include that as we're talking about the tiered system and other things. So if that's okay with you, we can certainly start looking into that.
That is exactly where that should be directed, is to the governance committee.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Is it true then that the presidents that were renewed today are renewed for 1 year on the existing program?
Yes, on the existing.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
We just want to make that perfectly clear to all of them that they have been renewed and on the existing program that we have now.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm talking about doing something forward.
Correct.
For future contract negotiations.
Okay, correct.
Yes, thank you. Are there any questions or any other future agenda items that would like to be brought forward?
I think, just to add to the contract term question and those agreements, I think the evaluation process itself is the way it's drafted in policy is pretty narrow. And if our goal is to support our presidents, figure out what we can do to help them, and make sure that we're giving direction when they need it and support when they're on their way, I think that it's incumbent on us to review that policy and make sure that it is serving us well and serving our presidents well. And so I think it's come up a couple of times as we've talked about evals.
Mm-hmm. So you're bringing up the evaluation process and to revisit that in board policy.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably end up doing that with what the Chancellor has suggested, but.
And that's a great point. I appreciate Ms. Reichert, she's an HR expert. That's exactly what Tisa Mason, Larry Scogan, Member Ness and I were looking at, which is part of the tiered system of a 3 to 5 year where you can look at trends so people aren't under pressure like, why didn't you turn things around in 3 months? Well, it takes a couple of years to turn something around like that. So we look forward to your input as well, Member Reichert, on that.
And Madam Chair, I also would agree with Carrie on that, as well as we need concrete metrics, objective metrics.
Thank you. Point well taken. Any further discussion on future agenda items?
This is Eric.
Yes,
the
Eric.
one agenda item yes, hi. I'm now managing Chicago. The one agenda item I think is critically important is to address the increased use of special appointments and the ability of these individuals to grieve. And this is something we've been talking about on the ASA committee and made some great progress, and I just hope that can continue.
Okay, then we will keep that on our task list.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I also would
Dr.
like some, and I gave some information to, I think, Tammy a while ago about retention rights, and I would also like to have that looked at all the universities and colleges.
Good point. And that would fall into, I'm sure, another
administrative.
Administrative.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any further discussion or items for future agenda?
Yes, can we at some point discuss moving to a quarterly meeting process, quarterly meetings face-to-face and conference call meetings as needed, in addition to those?
I think that would be a very good thing to put on a review, a policy review. Thank you. I will ask, when does the agenda or the calendar go out, Christy? But there is a calendar in place now that we are following. Right, up until December. To December. So this would be a very good time for us to do that review. Any future items for agenda or board discussion? Hearing none, we'll go into the public comment. Is there anybody from the public who would like to come forward? Seeing none, we will move on. The future board meeting will be September 29th, 2016, and we will determine the location of that. And as far as I know, barring any changes, that would be a face-to-face meeting?
I think after the summer would be nice.
After the summer, it would be a good time. We have now concluded the agenda items. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.